Alright, so I can keep my camera steady here. I'll show you the garage door opener that's connected to my fence. First, I'll show you the fence that I made. It's made out of electrical conduit that's 1 inch in diameter. It has these little couplers here that screw on and hold nice and tight. So they didn't hold on tight enough. That's why I used some JB weld to try to correct that problem. Because what was happening is my fence would twist, and then I'd have to like push it to get it back straight again. But I was able to solve that problem, as you can see over here, with some screws that are self-tapping. They go all the way through the coupler and into the steel here. And then also I have here for the angles, they have these little tubes that curve so that you can run pipe through it or wire through it, and so that works pretty nice for the corners instead of using actual square corner pieces. So this remote control here is for the garage door opener. I spray painted brown, left this one button unpainted so that people know that's the only button to push. This button here pushes to turn on the light, which I don't have a light. And this is the locking mechanism. You flip it back or forth to lock it or unlock it. And I'm never going to have it in any other mode. So all you have to do is just walk up, push the button, and the gate opens. And you notice it will slam just a little bit. Not a big deal. One issue the wife brought up to me was that in case the electricity went out, how are you going to get in to move the gate? And so what I did is I put some pavers down the ground underneath this gate, underneath this fence here. I put a piece of top rail chain link 1 and I think 3/8 inch or something pipe here, and in the ground here is a little piece of pipe that it slides into because it's tapered at this end. And I'm working on connecting the fencing with some wire. And then up here, the way that I keep the gate held up against the wood is with this spike that I bent at this nice little angle. I drilled a hole through the top of my wood, and then I put a piece of metal in there so that in case it rains and the wood swells, I can still lift this nail up and down without a problem. And then all I have to do is lift this pole out of the hole and then walk through the gate. Then another thing I did over here is I tied off my railroad tie to my hinged side of my gate so that they'd be basically like one integral piece, and so the push and pull of the garage door opener would make it all one integral piece, and you wouldn't have a lot of where the pole would move separately and eventually warp and give way in the rain and whatever else. So let me go ahead and close it again. And you can see it jumps when you go to close it. Well, that's not too bad, but when it slams a little bit when it hits the post here, but it's got a little bit of pressure on it so that it'll discourage the cows, because that's the main reason why I put it up there, to keep the cows from eating the roses and stuff like that. And I've had this fence for probably about 10 years, and it's held up really nice. I used to have it hinged over here on this side, and then when it would open up, I would take my little nail with a hole drilled through the wood, and I'd push it to hold the gate closed here, and then it wouldn't flop around when it got windy or whatever. We could drive in and out without a problem. Like if there weren't cows that particular day that we saw out, we just leave the gate open. No big deal. But now I've since switched the hinges to this side over here because my electricity's on this side of my driveway, so I wanted to be able to access it that way. If I had to, in an emergency, walk through the walk-through gate, I could come in and flip this little lever on the carriage and then pull this carriage by hand, and it pulls real easy. It's not a lot of work. And then when the electricity's working, you just flip the little lever up and it grabs the worm gear and it's able to work again whenever the electricity's there. And then I got this mounted up on three 2x. I got a 2x6 on the bottom and two 2x4s on top, because that's what I just had hanging around. But it helps. That much height is enough to give it the clearance that it needs from the top of this railroad tie to the bottom of the carriage. The way I have it hooked up here is I cut a piece of right angle iron, drove it through there. Let me tighten that up a little more. And then I use this is for a top rail chain link fence, and so I drilled a hole through there to hold it in place. I was going to put it this way, and then I had a brain fart and didn't do it, because then that way I wouldn't have to worry about the possibility of the nut dragging on the railroad ties, which is like we'll do it anyway. And then I put a little wing nut on here so that I can take it apart easy in case I have to manually disconnect it for a while or something. And then I'll show you how I got these hooked up. I just have this little clamp that comes for your chain link fence, and I have it drilled through there, holding on to this 1-inch conduit. And then here I have a pipe clamp, and it's clamped onto a little piece of plastic that you can't really see. But the reason why I didn't put the clamp directly below here is because I was afraid that it might get hung up in this mechanism here. And so that way it's sliding on top of the piece of plastic, and so it should give it a little more smoother going back and forth. And this isn't tightened down so it can pivot without a problem. And I put it about 1/3 of the way, this pipe here about 1/3 of the way in. Just kind of a guesstimate. I had tried a much longer pipe just by hand to see what it would do, and because the pipe was longer than my rail there, it didn't fully open. So I figured out, oh, okay, I need to have a piece of pipe that's about 6 or 7 feet long, not too long, so it will actually be able to work without a problem. And then, in case you don't know about these garage door openers, they have a little switch here that when it gets pushed, then the gate stops. And so you can limit the travel either to the front or to the back for opening and closing it. And then I bought this little $7 box at Lowe's, spray painted brown so it kind of matched the terrain, and also I spray painted so that the UV light wouldn't destroy the plastic. And then that's hiding my motor, which I'll take that apart and show you. Okay. This stuff always works when it's not on video. And then, of course, the nice thing about shooting video is you get to use one hand. Okay, awesome. And like I said, the guy that sold it on Craigslist sold it for $50 because the sensors weren't working. And I tried having them at a distance and they didn't work, but I butted them up face to face, put some duct tape to make sure they stayed that way, and then wired it in here to the 2 terminals, and works beautifully. There's also I researched that on eBay that there's some circuits that will put out a pulse, and that's what this Genie is looking for, is a pulse. You can't just short it and make it work. It's actually looking for a little pulse there, so it knows that you have a sensor hooked up. And for about less than $10 you can buy that little circuit, so in case these sensors die, then that's probably what I'll do. And then these 2 wires here just go to the button over there on my fence post. I put this L bracket here because when I was first engaging the garage door opener, it would actually move and pull out of this bracket that I have here, and so that stops it from pushing forward that way. And this bracket is just some of your strong tie that you get in the building department, Home Depot or Lowe's. And so I just have it screwed into my railroad tie, and then there's a little 3x4 section of wood here that's has it up at the height that it needs to be, so that the top of the railroad tie will clear my little carriage here. And so there's about a hand's width distance, and that's plenty for it to travel freely. And like I said, it just has a little right angle, a little connector that's used for the top rails on your chain link fence. And it works really nicely, I think. So I'll come back over here and I'll let you see it work again. And it opens up nice and wide so that I can drive a car right through. All right, hope you enjoyed and got something useful out of it.